and welcome to another episode of Epic Events. My name is Candace Davis, and I'm the Director of Event Programming and Creative Services here at vFairs. And on today's podcast, we will be talking about integrating entertainment into events. I know this is a hot topic, one that I've wanted to cover for quite some time. And my podcast guest is Christian Henderson, a director of talent partnerships at G7 Entertainment Marketing. And I believe he's located here in Nashville, which I'll ask in a second. But welcome to the show, Christian.
Thank you so much, Candace. Happy to be here.
Good. I'm excited to have you here. And this is one of the last podcasts of this year in 2023. And it's one of my favorite topics that I've been wanting to cover. So I'm super excited to have someone, especially you, coming in from G7. And I wanted to say at first, you've obviously had 20 years in the entertainment industry. And if anyone has worked in, that industry specifically, what G7 and who G7 is. So I am just pumped to have you here with me today.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to share our story.
Yeah. And okay, so you're in Nashville, right?
Yep. Been here since 2008 and a proud East Nashvilleian to be specific. So
nice. Yeah. Keep East Nashville weird. Is that still a thing that we say?
Yeah, we'll use it. We'll use it this time.
Nice. I want to get into the topic today. We're going to be talking about integrating entertainment into events. And I think what really has brought this to a lot of our customers, it's been on a lot of our customers' minds and a lot of mine, the time that I get to spend in the services that I provide here at vFairs. But a lot of customers come to us and they go, we have these amazing virtual events or hybrid events or in-person events, and we just don't really know who to go to or where to go for entertainment needs. And that's kind of exactly where you guys come in, and another resource for them to also check out and listen to today. So all of you listening, this is going to be a really, really cool episode. So first I wanted to get into your career specifically, Christian. I know a little bit about you. I'm sure we probably crossed paths at some point since I was in the entertainment industry for a little short stint there. But I wanted to ask you, first of all, tell us about your career and then what's changed over time since you started. Big question, I know, but.
Oh yeah. That's interesting. So, I wanted to work in entertainment, most specifically in music, since I was a geeky little teenager, and went to school for it. Went to Northeastern, where they had a music business program that I graduated from, and then worked. Basically, just stumbled into live entertainment. First job out of college was embarrassingly booking and managing a Battle of the Bands concert series in Boston, eventually moving down here to Nashville, working at CAA for about 4 years, and then G7 ever since. And yeah, it's live music has been sort of the lifeblood to me, if you will. And it's just been something that every time I go to a concert, it refreshes me. It does the thing that I think everybody really wants it to do, which is bring up your spirit, connect with people, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, in terms of what has changed, wow. So all the way back from college. So yeah, I'm going to date myself. I graduated in 2006. I'm going to just use this as a prime example of what has changed. Is I have a 9-year-old son. And he is kind of following in his dad's footsteps. He's ready to be a pretty big music nerd. And long story short, we couldn't get Spotify to work one day. And so I gave him my old iPod to listen to music.
You still have it?
I still have it. Now he does. And he thinks it's fascinating.
Oh.
But to put it into like a child's eye is like, he was like, oh, do you have such and such artist? And I was like, no, it doesn't work that way back then. Like I had to download that stuff and then I had to upload it onto the iPod and I had to manage memory and all that sort of stuff. And, I'm old enough to remember singles and all that sort of stuff. And so like the idea of the concept of what music is to people these days is far different. Most particularly like entertainment, like same thing is the idea. You talk about a generational change in the way people consume entertainment and the
Yeah.
way what it means to them these days, right? Is it's at some ways it's more disposable, right? But in most ways, it identifies you more because like heck, the reason why Taylor's recent tour is such a significant thing is because you kind of really haven't seen that since like the Michael Jackson Bad tour, right?
Right.
Where like you had a convergence of many different people of many different walks of life who wanted to be a part of that community. These days, everything's segmented, and entertainment is an identifier as to who you are. It was before, but like everybody liked the Beatles, so like if you were a Beatles fan, it was the sliding scale of how big a Beatles fan you were, right?
Yeah.
These
Of
days, it's
course.
like, okay, I know such random artists in this subgenre of a subgenre, and I'm friends with the other three people in the subreddit that loves this band and all that sort of stuff. And so I think entertainment in some way, shape, or form is now more personal than it ever was before.
Agreed. Yeah. Big changes, but the concept of segmentation has been a big thing. And then when you find those, shows and those tours where it's more universal, where people of all walks of life, are there together, there's something really cool about that because you don't find that as much anymore, from
Yeah,
my,
and you know
yeah,
what, Candace, to sort of bring it into my experiences over time. I loved my experience at CAA, but ultimately, what drew me to G7 and what we do is the fact that it's not an agency's fault by any means, but they're just one spoke in the wheel, and you book and you send out the contract, and you never hear of that show again if you're lucky. It's only you hear about the bad shows coming back to haunt you in some way, shape, or form.
yeah,
But at G7, we love to do what I've been forcing myself to call like a 360 approach to booking, right? So we're there at the end of the night with the corporate client, enjoying the artist or the talent or the speaker that we book for them. And that's a great feeling to be a part of a community, even one that's sort of maybe quote unquote manufactured as a corporate event might be or a conference. But at the end of the day, everybody's there to have a good time, to maybe potentially learn something, whatever the case may be. It's it's a fantastic communal experience, and I think that's one of those things that maybe is overlooked by a lot of events.
yeah. I absolutely agree with that. And that's a big, career over 20 years in this industry. A lot of people, we were both music business majors, so that's awesome. And a lot of people that I went to school with, they're not in the entertainment or music business anymore, and I'm kind of one of them. And it's so nice to see people like you. You're still doing it. You're still in it. Have been super successful, and um, I really, kind of honor you for that. That's an amazing accomplishment. And yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about, G7 specifically. So I know we're talking about, booking talent and you guys really kind of partnering, with your clients and kind of being there all the steps of the way throughout that process of what that looks like. But let's back up a little bit and tell me about G7 for those who may not have heard of them and when it started, where you guys are located, which I know Nashville, but I'm sure other places too, but just so listeners can understand a little bit more about G7.
Yeah, absolutely. So as the story goes, we are part of a larger conglomerate of agencies that specialize in different things, anything from shopper marketing to like traditional advertising, PR, et cetera, et cetera. But the big dog in all of that group is our parent company, George P. Johnson, which is a worldwide recognizable event producer. I mean, 100 years ago, they started making American flags for auto shows, and then they started producing uh, the show for the automaker, right? So if Toyota was going to release a new car at the Detroit Auto Show, they were the ones who were helping Toyota do that. And then as time went on, and that company started to grow, one thing that kind of came up a few, 15, 20 years ago was it all started with basically a Jeep sponsorship of the Soul to Soul tour, the Faith Hill, Tim McGraw tour back in the day. Jeep sponsored it because as the story goes with Tim and Faith, Tim took Faith out for their first date in a Jeep. And so it was like a marriage made in heaven when it comes to brand sponsorships. And then Jeep went to GPJ, our parent company, was like, how do we leverage this sponsorship that we're doing? And my CEO, Andre Gazzetta, and my general manager, Peter Brown, who were the founders of G7, were like, they were GPJ employees, and they're like, all right, let's see what we can do here. And then it became a business model that was pretty obvious, right? And so, I think right around the time I moved here, I'm forgetting exact years, but they branched out G7 to be an independent agency. And since then, we've, we sort of came from the lifeline of George P. Johnson, who would book massive events, produce massive events, from anything from Cisco Live to Dreamforce and all these big, recognizable, most specifically technology conferences. And again, these conferences needed talent, and we were the guys who were like, we can do that, and so we started to grow the business. When I joined with Rick Wetzel and Jasmine Evans, who were doing, for those who are listening and are sort of Nashville veterans, they were a part of Great Big Shows, which was one of the first real concert producers that specialized in rock music back in the day. And so they were brought on at the same time I was, and we started to develop what we call the Talent Partnerships Division. And that's really where we are. We're our silo within the sphere of G7. We are talent buyers. We help our clients, which we consider the conferences and the owners of the conferences, find talent that makes sense for them for their event. So that's what we do. We love it. I think now there's, again, I don't know the exact number, but probably 10 or 12 of us in the Talent Partnerships Division that books talent. And we have a few guys in LA, a guy in St. Louis, a guy in DC, and we're starting to spread our wings, across the country. And yeah, it's a great team. And yeah, we basically just figure out, my cheesy little elevator pitch is always, we try to find the right talent for the right event for the right client. And that's really our goal, because what we are considered in sort of the ecosystem of entertainment is we're a middle buyer, right? We ultimately don't pay the talent, that comes from a Cisco or a Salesforce, and we don't represent the talent. And so we're negotiating on behalf of our clients. And so we're called a middle buyer, and we pride ourselves in this starting off with the strategy and then ending with sort of the veteran experience.
Yeah. And for a lot of our listeners out there, our customers, a lot of those who are trying to plan and also market the virtual events, the hybrid events, the in-person events they're doing with us, a lot of those are marketing directors who are kind of stepping in on more of a planner level. And a lot of times they go like, where do I go for talent? Who do I look to? And that's a big reason why I wanted to bring you into the conversation today in this podcast, is to talk about, you guys are a huge resource, to kind of fill in that gap in that space where they go, who do I go to? Where do I go? And it's a lot of times they'll come to me and I'll help our customers and clients out, and I'll send to people like you, especially if they want to have artists or bands that they want to book for live entertainment for, their events too. But for those listening who may not know, why do companies like G7 exist in this entertainment industry world?
Yeah, I mean, we are an interesting little piece of it, right?
Yeah.
Because of what I just previously said, where we aren't the end client, as we call them, or we aren't representing talent. We sit in this fun little middle area where we get to provide strategy and we get to build relationships. And that's ultimately sort of that combination of things, and then tack on to our experience, decades worth of experience at this point. Um, that's where we see our value within the life of an event is, yes, it's all about, like the tagline in entertainment is it's all about who you know, right?
Yeah.
It kind of is at times, right?
Right.
It's not only how to source the talent, but it's how to negotiate on behalf of your client to get the talent that you need and in the format that you want them in. And um, it's not as simple as sort of calling up a agency and saying, okay, I've got 100 grand, who you got?
Mhm.
It requires a little bit of intelligence and understanding of it, and sort of having an unbiased approach to it, right? And that's why we really enjoy here at G7 our what we've called like an agnostic approach, right? We don't want to ever represent talent because we don't want our clients, like a Cisco or a Salesforce or whoever may be, feel like they're getting pushed one talent over the other because we have a vested interest in it. We just want to make the great thing happen at your event. We want that moment that happens when you close out your night with the Killers playing Mr. Brightside, or you have a keynote speaker or celebrity on your stage reinforcing some theme or message that you wanted to get across and you've been building towards for the last year before the event, right? And
Yeah.
so those are the moments that we want to amplify
Mhm.
and support. So yeah, anything from strategy to veteran experience, I think, is where we feel that's where we get our paychecks.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this gate has kind of swung wide over the past, 3.5 years with talent being more accessible. So, I remember being, back in the same industry, and, you didn't really just call up necessarily. You had someone kind of advocate for you and kind of reach out, because they would need to verify, like, hey, are you legit? Or are you just someone that's calling to see if so and so is still $200,000 to book for your show? They wanted to make sure you're, not a spammer, that sort of thing, just to see, like, Taylor Swift is how much to book, you know, and, getting that kind of accessibility where you can call, you can book people these days, and you can book talent online, especially virtual on our side of the business, has been really huge. We saw a huge influx of this back, 3 years ago, 3 years ago, even. People are still booking, even, talent to record, pre-record for virtual events, or hybrid events. And then, of course, in person, when that kind of got back in and rolling again, people were kind of back booking talent for in-person events as well. But would love to kind of get in that a little bit too. But with talent being more, easier to kind of go after, how do you see your value to the success of an event?
Yeah. So piggybacking off of what you just said, like anybody who watched the Fire Festival documentaries, right? Like that's the start of that company, was like
Yeah.
trying to make talent accessible
Hmm.
to the everyman, right? And there are platforms online that give you the contacts of the representatives of the talent, and you know, it's an affordable way to start that stuff. But you're right, like back in the day, and it still happens to a degree now, but you call up, you cold call an agency and you say, how much is so and so, and you're ready to submit an offer. More than likely, they're going to ask for a considerable chunk of that in escrow,
Mhm.
just to make the offer, not even just as a deposit on the confirmed show,
Yeah.
right? They need to know that you're not putting their talents at risk of
Mhm.
having a date that falls through, much
Yeah.
like the Fire Festival did, right? Um, and so that kind of again, relationship building is important, and I think I'm losing my train of thought. But um, ultimately, yeah, I think another thing that I want to touch on is Cameo, right?
Oh,
This is another sort of microcosm of
mhm.
accessibility to talent, right?
Absolutely.
Is that you pay what, I don't know, $500, fifteen
Yeah.
hundred bucks, and you get Kevin from the office to wish you a happy birthday. Um, that's easy, right? It's all online, and suddenly in your email or in your text you get a movie file from whatever. And then the other thing is, like, again, so the rise of social media and the appetite for that particular talent to potentially connect with um,
Mhm.
their fans and the audience, um, might allow for this concept of people thinking that they have access to these entertainment celebrities. Like, for instance, I had a client a year or two ago, um, just say like, oh, just follow them on Instagram and slide into their DMs. And I'm like, what? I do this professionally. No, I'm not
Yeah.
going to do that. Um, and so, yeah, I think ultimately, like, our importance in this, and like why um, we're needed
Mhm.
is for that exact reason, right? Like, we can make an offer on your behalf and not need to put down money in escrow. We can tell you that such and such artist is a pain in the neck to work with, and you shouldn't book them. Like, this is sort of just the thing that comes with history and
Mhm.
experience, right?
Yeah.
Um, Relationship building is something I just keep repeating right now, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
it's all of that is important into factors as to how you build a successful event.
Yeah. And, with your clients, they're not just a number. They are, you're building those key relationships with them. And the trust that comes with that too. Like you mentioned before, I mean, you can just cold call an agency. You're not going to build a relationship that way. You're going to be another number, you know?
Yeah, and if you don't have, again, I'm bragging about us, but that's why I'm here, right?
Of
Um,
course.
is
Yes.
if you don't have us, and William Moore, you get a deal confirmed. Like, say this is your first ever deal confirmed, and you get it from William Morris. You get the contract from William Morris, and that language might look pretty darn scary to you because
Mhm.
you haven't seen it and you don't know what is boilerplate, what is, or versus what is custom. And if you're a corporation, oh god, you send that up to your legal, you won't get that contract back before your date to play, right? And
True.
so we're set up in a way where we can be far more efficient in it. I could probably uh, recite you most T's and C's of those talent agencies contracts verbatim. Um, and yeah, it's one of those things where you think you might save a dollar by not having us here. It's one of those things. I think I saw this somewhere where it was talking about DIY projects, which was like the wisdom in it is that know when you need to hire a professional,
Mhm.
because it's just going to cost you more in the long run if you try and do it yourself. And
Yeah.
so, yes, there might be, you could hire a magician and blink and that's going to be fine. But you hire David Blaine, different story, right? So,
Mhm.
you got to think about who you're working with.
Yeah. And the interest that you have, in your clients to make sure that they're getting their goals met, is successful, it's everything that they wanted it to be and more, that sort of thing. And it's not just, okay, there's the show, maybe you'll book something again next year. You guys take a totally different approach, to how you do your business like this. And I've seen it firsthand. I mean, it's absolutely brilliant how you guys, really stand alongside your clients and make sure that they're happy, and everything is run the way they want it to be run.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're in the thick of it with you, right? We're in your foxhole.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, if your job is to build a successful event, I am a supporter of that, right?
Mhm.
I'm not a vendor to you. In
Yeah.
fact, sometimes I probably get a little too offended when I feel like one to
Mhm.
some clients. But no, it's about, we want partnership. We want this idea that we can be a trusted partner to you. You can call us at 12 o'clock at night and we'll be your professional therapists, right? And talk you
Yeah.
through something of an awful headache that you got
Yeah.
tangled up in.
Yeah. You
That's where we find our value, you know?
Exactly. And what you guys do to really, cultivate that trust that we talked about too, and maintain those solid business relationships is super important. But can you give an example, like what have you done to cultivate relationships like we're talking about? Any specific examples that you might have?
Yeah, actually, there's a great one most recently, which was um, one of my technology clients um, who was new to us about a year and a half ago. Um, they were going to have an event in London, and this was going to be the first event we were going to do with them, and they needed something with gravitas to make something happen. And they thankfully they had a healthy budget, um, and but again they wanted something different and unique. And this is a it's talents the whole talent discovery process, the strategy kind of drug its feet a little bit in the process, and we were down to weeks, not months, before the event. And we finally confirmed a well recognizable producer, um, hip hop musician. And originally, we submitted the offer for that talent to speak for about 40 minutes and then perform 3 songs. And agent came back, and again, this is where relationships help out too. Is, we were able to have an honest conversation. He didn't say, "Hey, we just have to pass on this because it's not the thing he wants to do." He was like, "Can we figure out a way to keep this thing alive?" And I said, "Yeah, let me go back to the client and we'll talk about it." And so that talent, because of an album cycle situation, just didn't want to perform solo without the rest of his group. And so collectively, between the agent, the manager, my client, and me, hopped on a pre call and said, okay, well, what if we do this thing where it's kind of like Song Exploder, if you guys are familiar with that podcast,
Yes, love it.
where it's essentially behind the music, right? And they were like, yeah, that sounds cool. And the talent representatives were like, yeah, I think he'd like to do that. And I think he'd be willing to essentially, because he's a producer, show off his Pro Tools rig in the process. And for those who don't know, Pro Tools is a recording software that is damn near ubiquitous in the recording industry these days. And so fast forward to the event date. Um, we get him there, we get him on stage, and he pops in his laptop, and the video screen is behind him. It's him and one of the company leaders having just a casual conversation, and then the producer will go, "Oh yeah, this reminds me of this part of that song." pops it up on the big screen, and it's this unique, one of a kind experience that had never been done before for at least this artist and at least this client, to a place where they go, oh, we got something special out of this. Which I love being a part of those. I love finding
Mhm.
ways to make things interesting, you know?
Yeah, the experiences that come out of, using someone like, you guys for talent booking, is just very different, than going the other route. And I appreciate that too. And I know you guys have so many stories like this where the experience that's come out of it has been super unique, not only to the audience, but also to the artist, which a lot of times artists go, yeah, I've done this before. I know what to do, plug
Yeah,
and play, or yeah, I'll you ask me these 3 questions and then I'm going to sing a song and kind of wrap it up here. But if we can bring, that sort of creativity to the table, that's huge. That's huge for your client, for their audience. Maybe it's employees, maybe it's, customers of theirs even coming to these, types of events. And it's really special for you too on your side. It's just a win-win for everybody when a unique experience comes out of something like this.
absolutely. It's I think the thing that we all strive for, right? Is
Yeah.
not only is it what makes your event better or more memorable than your competitors, it's also what made your event in 2023 better than 2022 or
Yeah.
2019. Let's just skip over the virtual years. Um, and that matters, right? Like,
Yeah.
sometimes it does, you have to keep topping the mountaintop,
Mhm. Yeah, and that can be hard to do. It really
Yeah.
can. Like, how do you trump that last experience that you just talked about? I'm sure you'll find a way, but that's the reason why you're in this business, and I'm sure why you love what you do is because of outcomes like the scenario that you just mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some really fun stories in that category of just kismet moments.
Yeah, and that's one of the questions I'll ask you. We only have a couple of questions left, but, I'm holding out the best question for last for your, favorite career stories. But before we get to that one, for, people who are listening who may need to, book talent for maybe an event coming up this year or next year, and heck, even 3, 4, or 5 years from now, let's see, whenever it is that they might need talent for, why should an event incorporate talent, number one, whether in our business it'd be virtual, hybrid, or in person, which I know you guys do a lot of that. But why? The big question is why incorporate
Right.
talent.
Why spend the money, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean it's the golden question in all of our jobs, right? Like if you work an event, why, I don't know, why go with this food vendor over that vendor, or do we
Mhm.
need to provide this thing, this draping, whatever it may be. Anyways, but in our world, why talent is twofold, right? It's like it breaks up, with no offense intended, it breaks up the monotony, right? Like it creates so many different variables that are sometimes intangible, from being a discussion point of people on site and being like, oh, I'm going to see you ready to go see such and such perform, or I can't wait to see this guy talk about his business. I really hope they ask this question on stage. Um, to promotion, right? I mean, like that's plain and simple. That's the bare bones of why I think everything here started was you want to get butts and seats, right? And so like names that they recognize do that. But ultimately, as we progress and get deeper and more refined in the relationship between events and talent, it's also about sort of everybody's a brand nowadays, right? I mean, yes, you are a brand if you have an event, right?
Yeah.
Obvious. But
You have a name, you're a brand,
right,
apparently.
exactly. If you're Maroon 5, people know that name and associate it with a certain feeling, a certain emotion, a certain drive, and a certain tension. And so you slap Maroon 5 in with Cisco, and you've got a you've essentially got yourself a partnership. It's a one-time situation where Cisco employees or Cisco customers coming to this event get to see Maroon 5, and they get to see them usually in a way that no one would ever see him before, right? Where you have to pay the $300 ticket to get to the floor seats of them here at the arena. But at Cisco Live, you get to get close to them just because you got a badge and you've been at the conference all week, right? And so there's definitely that leverage to it too, of the marriage between brands, making sure that your brand stays looking relevant, looking cool, or just frankly appealing, kind of thing. It breaks up the staleness of sometimes these events. And then, you jump into the keynote speaker space where you have somebody literally standing on your stage, reinforcing your theme and message that you want to get across to your attendees. Like that's more than its weight in gold. And like, you can't as the event producer or as the client, as I would call them, you can't say that 1,000 times and make it more impactful than when, say, a celebrity does, right? It just,
Absolutely.
It's that thing where, like if you're a parent, your kid goes and talks to mom and says, can I get this? Like, can I get this piece of chocolate? And mom says no. You go to the other parent, right? But then like, if dad says no, then it definitely means no, right? Like two no's means a no. And in this world, yeah, like having a reinforcement to your theme and message. I mean, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, going back to Cameo, that was the big thing for us. We had some customer facing events just on behalf of our company, talking about our roadmap and new things, new products, all that sort of thing. And, I've used Cameo multiple times, for celebrity things, especially The Office, have definitely used some, Office characters, and it's been hilarious. It's been so fun. And Napoleon Dynamite. I mean, who doesn't remember, all those days and how hilarious it is? And bringing those to your event, hearing celebrities say the name of your company is kind of like, whoa, they just said the name. That's pretty cool, and for them to talk about, your company and to be there, like you're mentioning too, celebrities, talent, like you mentioned with Cisco and Maroon 5. That was these are really cool moments that have just kind of come up, and things happen organically there too. Relationships build, before, during, and after events and
Yeah,
experiences like that.
absolutely. I mean, that kind of relationship matters to the client as well. Like there's a bunch of tech CEOs, like it's the old saying that, athletes want to be rock stars and rock stars want to be athletes. It's kind of comparable with CEOs these days, right?
It is.
Executives want the same thing. And, like I've always joked that my autobiography will be called Everybody Has Their Own Rock Stars, because the CEOs have an ego, the talent has an ego, and you gotta marry those two some way, shape, or form. So it's always really funny when you get to see two guys who are worth like billions of dollars doing totally different things become best friends.
Super cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that leads me to, would love to hear one or two, if you have, we do have time, of your favorite career stories. So this is probably one of my favorite things to hear about, just with, guests that we have on the podcast, and especially with you being in this, very unique area and sector of, the music business and entertainment industry. You have a lot of stories. I was there for 5 years, and I have quite a few stories, to
Yeah.
tell too, but you've got some really, really good ones. You're like in the knee deep in it. So would love to hear some of your best career stories.
Yeah, I'll save all the bad ones for
offline.
when
Talk
we
about
get a drink, Candace. Those can't be recorded.
yeah.
But a couple really good ones are, um, so I'm at the right age to have fallen in love with Green Day. Dookie came out at the right time for me discovering music. Fast forward to 2013, 2014, we book them as part of one of their first ever corporate events. And it's massive. It's in San Francisco. And they're going to play whatever where the San Francisco Giants play. They changed that name a few times now. And they load in. It's a giant festival stage, all this sort of stuff. It's massive. I mean, it looks like it's supposed to be there in a baseball stadium if you've ever seen a concert in a baseball stadium. But it had been raining for like 3 or 4 days straight. And so just the entire city of San Francisco was underwater. And at some point, Green Day goes on stage. They get into, I think, their like third song. And you just start to hear the audio cracking like that. And you're like, oh my God, what is going on? And you turn over. And for those that don't know, there's a position in music called the front of house. Any show you'll see it. They're the guys who are sitting behind the big board that pushes all the dials, and they've got essentially the best seat in the house. And they had like a 10 by 10 tent over the front of house, and you just see that the rain had collected on the roof of the 10 by 10 tent so much that the tent broke, and there was just water pouring onto electronics that were supposed to be amplifying a punk rock band to like 30,000 people. And so everything went dead. The band finally gets told, like, no one can hear you. And they walk off stage. And in our world, we're like, oh, what does this mean? Like, technically this is a force majeure. Does Green Day need to get paid? Or will they go back on stage? What do you do next? And this is just one of those moments where, like, you can't plan this. Yeah. And, like, it was their first ever corporate event. They could have just said, sorry, guys, like, bad luck. I'll see you next time. But Billy Joe Armstrong, the lead singer of Green Day, comes back on stage just himself and starts singing one of their most recognizable hits, Time of Your Life, to the front row audience. So the first 3 or 4 rows of people standing there drenched in rain. And everybody knows the lyrics of this song. Even if you don't know the name of it, you know these lyrics.
You do.
And by the second chorus, there is an entire stadium filled with people singing Time of Your Life without any amplification. No microphones, no nothing. And it was just one of these special moments where you're just like, everyone's going to remember this. And it was really, really cool. They eventually got the audio back working, and they finished up the concert in full. But it was really fun. And then one really short one, and I can show it to you. So it's right there. I get to see this all the time, which is super fun. So I'm a big nerd, big comic book nerd. I'm a big Batman fan. And right when one of the last Star Wars movies came out, I had the pleasure of booking Mark Hamill for something, and for an event where he spoke and just kind of talked about whatever the audience wanted to talk about. It was super casual. It was wonderful. And Mark was just an absolute delight of a person. And we're backstage, and he's just signing things. Like, everybody's got a thing for him to sign. My niece, who hadn't been born yet, my brother-in-law was a diehard Star Wars fan. So I got a poster off Etsy that says, I'm a Jedi like my father before me. And he signed that on to Phoebe, my niece. And then for me, that right there, if you can't see it, is the Joker. And for those that remember from the 90s, Mark Hamill was the voice of the Joker on the 90s cartoon. And so I said to him, Mark, when I close my eyes and I think of the Joker, I hear your voice. And then he goes into telling me how he developed that voice, because he's a well-known voice actor at this point.
Mhm.
And then he turns to look at me, and he just starts talking to me as the Joker. And if you're a nerd to the degree I am, it was cloud nine. It was heaven. It was just so
That's
cool.
so
And it
cool.
was just one of those moments where you're like, I love what I do, and it's so cool that I get to combine my fandom with my job, and then also then get to, like, the old school saying for us is always like, our job is somebody else's vacation, and that's
Mhm.
just amazing.
Yeah. Those are such neat stories. I love that. Probably because he's so over people just, yeah, Star Wars. He's like, oh, someone's talking about the Joker. Okay, yeah, let's go
Yeah,
there. He probably really appreciated you doing that. um, those are so neat. So yeah, I do want to talk later on about some of the bad stories. So I
yeah.
have a few to
I'll
share.
need
We'll
a few drinks in me.
yeah, well, I have a few to share as well. So,
Nice.
well, I have absolutely enjoyed our conversation. It's been so fun bringing someone, from the entertainment industry. My heart is still there. A piece of my heart, I did, leave it in the entertainment and music business. So, it's been great, Christian. And before we, sign off for this podcast, is there anything that you want to leave with our audience? And part two of this, where can they find you? That's the big question too.
Yes. What I would leave with the audience is, and I kind of always say this to our interns, is, don't be afraid to ask questions. Everybody loves to sound smart, so you get yourself in front of somebody who is an expert, or, you know just find your way, and ask the questions to get to the thing you need. And like, if you don't know talent yet, find a way to incorporate them, because I do believe in the value of it at an event. So yeah, ask the questions to get the right talent.
Mm.
And then to find us, g7marketing.com. We're all on your typical sort of socials, Instagram, and LinkedIn most specifically, and you can find me there too. It's probably mostly Instagram is mostly just pictures of my kids, but hunt me down. You can find me. You see my face. You see my name. Just search for me.
Nice. Well, great. Thank you again so much for being on this episode. It's been a lot of fun. And also, many thanks to everyone tuning in and listening to this podcast. We always love hearing from our listeners. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn and just let me know what you're thinking of the podcast and any upcoming topics you'd like to hear as we wind down the year and go into next year. So, if you want to chat with us here at vFairs, please do. We would love to hear from you. Just shoot us an email. Our email address is sales@vfairs.com, and we'd be very happy to help you out there. But until the next episode, peace, love, events. Bye, everyone.